Test, test. All right. Is our Facebook Live started? Yeah, all right, great. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you for coming again. So wonderful to see some familiar faces, some new faces, and I hope you are enjoying our Forefront series. Super proud to introduce my good friend Naveen Jain, who is, so I have to give him a nice big long intro because he is way too humble to say anything about himself. Even though we tried. We recorded a podcast earlier and he refused to talk about himself, so I'm going to talk about you a little bit. Naveen is the founder of Viome, but before he founded Viome, he's been a serial entrepreneur, founding 4 or 5 technology companies, some of the biggest that you've ever heard of. And through those technology companies, Naveen has been very fortunate to be able to use his knowledge and, quite frankly, his money to take some moonshots. And I think next to the word moonshot in the dictionary, you'll find a picture of Naveen, because he's definitely the definition of that. He's one of the first people that the United States actually granted permission to land on the moon and do whatever you're going to do there. He also decided he's going to solve the world's problems. And when he looked out there and he saw problems that needed to be solved, he picked healthcare. And Naveen doesn't have a medical background, right? And so he just looked out there and saw, we have a giant problem in healthcare in this country. And that's why, you know, we basically created Next Health. Next Health is here to turn the entire healthcare industry on its head and refocus our attention and take control of our health, right? We want to refocus our attention on the cause of what's making us unhealthy rather than going to the doctor and getting a pill or getting a surgery. That's not what it's all about. We want to stay healthy, remain healthy from the moment we're young, so we never have to go to the hospital. We don't never need the doctor. And Naveen also saw that same problem with our healthcare system, a totally fractured, broken system. And he said, how can I make the most difference for the most people? And he founded the company Viome. And I think I'll start there with a few things, a few questions for Naveen. And what we'd like to do is about 30 minutes of questions about, you know, we'll just have a quick conversation up here because I think there's a lot that we'd like to share with you first, and then questions and answers. So if someone can give me like a 30-minute warning, whoever's going to be right over there where I can see them, that would be great. And we'll launch with Naveen. So Naveen, tell me a little bit, just real quick first, before we talk about Viome, why healthcare? I want to hear from your own words.
So first of all, it's really obvious to everyone who's sitting here that our healthcare system is victimizing us. So if you think about every stakeholder in the healthcare system, everyone takes care of themselves except the poor patient, who is the one who gets actually left behind. Pharmaceuticals make money when you are sick. They don't make money when you're not sick. Hospitals make money when you're sick. Doctors only make money when you're sick. They cannot make money if you're not sick. So if you're not sick, they get sick, right? And that's really the problem. So everybody in the healthcare system wants you to stay sick. They love chronic diseases. Chronic disease to them means a subscription business. Oh, you're young enough, you got the diabetes. Oh, ka-ching! All your life, you're going to be taking insulin. Oh my God, you got rheumatoid arthritis? Big ka-ching! Now you're going to be taking biologics for the rest of your life. Everything is for the rest of your life. And why is it? I mean, there is no industry that I know of where you can sell them a product or a service knowingly that 7 out of 10 or 8 out of 10 are going to be only harmed by it and not going to have any benefit. And let me explain you why I say that. And the other 20%, 2 out of 10, may get some benefit, but they're also going to be harmed by it. So the best drug, when they do the FDA approval, have efficacy rate of 20% to 25%. And what they don't, people don't understand what efficacy means. That means is, other 80% of the people, it does no good. That means it only does all the things you hear on TV. It also causes impotency, blah, 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 blah. Right? So all 80% of the people only get the harm, 20% of people get some benefit, but they also get the harm. And interesting part is, every single one symptom that they cure, they cause 3 more symptoms. And they have a business model. They have a drug for every one of the symptoms they caused. And when you take the drugs for those 3 symptoms, you got 9 more symptoms. Guess what? They got drugs for them too. And by the time you get old, you're popping more pills than blueberries. And that's another big problem you have, right? Because really the whole system is just designed to make themselves, I would say, wealthy. What I found was that how could a person who is a CEO of a pharmaceutical company ever can look in the mirror every day and saying we could cure, but there is no money in cure. We would rather keep people sick. And he still keeps himself alive. He doesn't find the courage to shoot himself and say, my life is not worth living. And that's the kind of system we live in. And to me, what occurred to me was that in life, the only way you want to live your life is not just to take care of yourself, but you also take care of the people who are around you. I believe our generation is the generation that will be known for solving this problem. We are not the people who are going to pass this thing on to the next generation. We are not the people who are going to go say, you know what, I'm going to allow our children and grandchildren to suffer because we were not bold enough to take action. Because this problem can be solved. The reason this problem can be solved is really simple. For the first time in the human history, we actually have the technology to be able to understand what is making people sick. For the first time, individuals and a small group of people are capable of doing things that could only be done by large corporations or nation states. I believe the entrepreneurs in this world are going to become the next superpower. It is the people like the gentleman you see here. He is the one who's changing the way the healthcare is delivered. He was on the dark side. He was a medical doctor. Now imagine, and he will tell you what happens. When you go through a medical school, they do not have one single course on nutrition. They don't teach you about what causes the different diseases. They're simply taught in the second year, they start telling you, symptom, drugs, symptom, drugs. How do you prescribe the drugs? And all these medical schools, they are basically the sales people for the pharmaceutical company. They're simply out there to sell the pharmaceutical drugs. And if somebody gets wiser and not prescribing enough drug, you know what they do? They send a pretty girl to them. Hey, doc, you're not prescribing enough Lipitor. What's going on? Well, I don't think the statin is good. We've got a trip to Hawaii coming up. Right? Yeah. And they essentially get you to start selling more and more and more drugs. They don't really care what is going on with people. It doesn't matter to them. And to some extent, almost everything starts because you personally feel that it's you or someone you know is hurting and you got to do something about it. You can't take it anymore. In this particular case, my dad. So my dad found out that he has a pancreatic cancer. And I just could not believe the things they put him through. They told him he needs to do a chemotherapy. I had never heard of what this chemotherapy was. I thought it is some type of medicine. You go there were hundreds of chairs in a small area. One nurse, they didn't care. They put the IV in there and they dropped the red poison. This chemotherapy, I don't care what they call you. It is a red poison. They put in your body, hoping something good will come out of it. In 4 weeks later, he was so energetic before he did. He didn't even know he had a pancreatic cancer. He couldn't walk, he couldn't talk, he couldn't eat, and he just was lying. And I'm thinking, we got to stop this thing. So we stopped the chemotherapy. And I know there is nothing I can do at this point. Because we know, here's the thing I'm going to talk about a little bit more. We finally know that every single chronic disease, you can name whatever you want. These are not the diseases. These are the names we give to the conditions we have. We call them Parkinson's, we call them Alzheimer's, we call them depression, we call them anxiety, we call them obesity, we call them diabetes, we call them autoimmune diseases, we call them cancers. There is no such thing as breast cancer. It happens to be a cancer in the breast. There is no such thing as liver cancer. It's simply the cancer in the liver. And here's the interesting thing. Not only our gut causes these chronic diseases, and I'll tell you how it all happens. Whether the cure for these diseases work or does not work also depends on your gut microbiome. So whether the immunotherapy works or does not work depends on your gut. Whether the chemotherapy works or does not work depends on your gut. Whether the drugs you're taking work or does not work depends on your gut. And we'll come back and tell you why is it that it is so important. But with that, the reason I got so upset about this whole thing was someone has to do it. And the interesting thing is, Dr. Shah and I talked about it briefly. It's quite possible. We are the pioneers. We are going to be the igniters. We are going to be the ones that are going to essentially start this movement. We may fail. There is no guarantee that we'll be able to solve these problems on our own because the pharmaceutical companies are relying on the fact that we will never come together. People will never come together to understand what's causing and what's harming their bodies. All these pharmaceutical companies have become the parasite on humanity. And humanity will come together to kill these parasites, and we are going to ignite that. Even if we die as a business, I'm telling you, we would have started the movement, and someone is going to take the baton, and they're going to go out and kill that parasite. And if it's not us, so be it. But we would have never, ever started this if we did not believe someone after us has a potential to take it over and deliver on this promise. So I promise you, as long as I have my breath, I'm going to make this happen. And when I die, someone in this room is going to take over and make that happen. But we will kill these parasites.
That's fantastic. I mean, you can tell Naveen's a little bit passionate about this topic. So, changing healthcare, all of you should be so proud of yourself for making the time and the effort to come to these things, because you're the beginning of this movement where you're taking control over your own health. You're taking the initiative to educate yourselves and to take your health into your own hands and not outsource it to this medical monstrosity that we have that just prescribes you drugs and you pay health insurance and it's a disaster. And I think, Naveen and I, we both come from the same mindset, actually, of course, that we want to change this entire system. And the number one way you will do that is to educate yourself, and then you will know how the system has basically failed you, right? So being here is the first step in this, and we hope these talks are helpful to you. I want to take this education part a step back a little bit. Let's talk about the microbiome, because this is something that we just started talking about this in medicine and as a scientist in the last 5 years. And it's important for you all to realize too, in the last 5 years, we've learned more about our human bodies and what affects it than we have in all of humanity combined. The pace of acceleration of discovery is incredible right now. In fact, we know more than we can even handle right now. And what Viome has done has taken that information and used artificial intelligence to tell you what it means. So the microbiome, this is basically a collection of trillions of bacteria, viruses, and fungi that live inside of us. We first, when I was trained as a doctor 20 years ago, I was taught to kill all the bacteria, kill all the viruses. They're all bad for you. And we know that that is not even remotely true. So let's talk a little bit about what is the microbiome and why is it important?
So first of all, let's just talk about what it means to be human. Because I really believe that once you understand that, there are more foreign cells in our body than the human cells. That means the cells that we get from our mom and dad, there are fewer of them than what we actually acquire after that from these microorganisms. And now let's talk about what makes us human. So what we realize is we were always told that our genes are our destiny. Remember, our genes, our DNA is our destiny. It turns out our genes are not our destiny. Our human DNA only produces about 20 to 22,000 genes. The microorganism, I'm going to talk a little bit more about them in a second here, they produce somewhere between 2 million to 20 million genes. Think for a second. At best, we are 1% human. Right? 99% of everything we have in our body that's being expressed is not human. We are basically a beautiful container for these microorganisms. Right? And to a large extent, now I'm going to tell you about what is it that they do, and you will realize soon it is not them taking care of us, it is about us taking care of them, and that's the only way we can stay healthy. So Dr. Shah, if I can indulge for 2 minutes in telling a story, and that's a tongue-in-cheek story that I'm going to give you a scientific basis for everything I said, is about how humans were created. So you're going to indulge with me for just a second here and say, okay. So I'm going to tell a story that normally if you were a child and if you close your eyes and you just imagine what is going on. So everyone, I invite you to just close your eyes and I'm going to tell you this story. So this story is about how humans were created. So we all know the planet started about 4.6 billion years ago. And we started to see these small organisms like bacteria and amoeba and viruses about 3.5, 4 billion years ago. Humans only evolved in the last couple of million years. What caused the humans to be evolved? So here's how I think all happened. One day, just imagine, all these bacteria and viruses are living in Africa. They all got together and they said, we are sick and tired of living in this small space. We want to take over the world. And they all looked at each other. One of them said he had a solution. What would that be, sir? What if we can create something that's bipedal? Trillions of us could live right inside it. All we have to do is keep this thing healthy. We can make it crave any food we want. Whatever food we want, they're going to run around and find the food for us. They're going to go all over the world in this bipedal thing. They're going to poop everywhere. They're going to spread us everywhere. And we're going to take over the world. And they created humans. And here is the thing. Right after they created humans, they start to worry what is going to happen to them. Just like today the humans created artificial intelligence and we worry if someday artificial intelligence gets smarter than us, what will happen to us humans? The organisms start to think, oh my God, what have we created? What if someday these thing called humans became smarter than us? What will we do? They reassembled. And this time they had to call the master. Master, we have a problem. What's the problem, son? Aren't you worried we created humans? What if someday they became smarter than us? Master says, no, not at all. We took care of that problem when we created them. What is the secret, master? Inside their human cell, they think they're called mitochondria. It provides all the energy for their cell. They don't know that mitochondria is one of our brothers. It is just a bacteria. It's captured inside their cell. We talk to it all the time. Anytime the humans get out of control, we shut the mitochondria and they are dead. Master, that's brilliant. But you're not thinking. They're starting to develop this thing called brain. What are we going to do about that? Master says that was the first thing we thought about. Remember, we all live in the gut. We put a direct connection to their brain. And they call that a vagus nerve. Can you believe they thought they're going to name it after Las Vegas, thinking what happens in the gut is going to stay in the gut? They're wrong. What happens in the gut goes everywhere. And here's the best part. What makes them feel good, this serotonin thing, we don't let them produce much of that. 90% of that we produce it right ourselves in the gut. We control their behavior, we control their mood, we control their amygdala, we control their prefrontal cortex. All the decisions they make, we control them right from here. We are the one who are pulling all the strings. They are simply the puppet. But like a good leader, we make them think they are the one who are making the decisions. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. We have taken over the world. And ladies and gentlemen, now you know who your new boss is.
A great bedtime story for anyone with kids.
But really, now I'm going to tell you the scientific facts. So if you go out and Google, there is a Nature paper that was published that shows that how microbiome control our mood, emotions, and behavior for their own benefit. That's a paper published in Nature. You will also see that mitochondria and microbiome, how they communicate during aging. And as we age, the mitochondrial gene expression is constantly changing as we communicate through microbiome. And they also did the research that the people who are healthy at old age, their microbiome still is very similar to when they were young. And the people who have disease state have a dysbiosis. That means their microbiome has completely changed. Interesting thing is, if you just Google Parkinson's and microbiome, you will see the Parkinson's starts in the gut 15 years before you get the first symptom. You just Google depression and microbiome. Look at the obesity and microbiome, autoimmune diseases. You can start to look multiple psoriasis, any of these diseases. they all you will find start in the gut. So imagine, we spend billions of dollars developing this technology. Billions of dollars and all this work simply to go back to what our forefathers already knew. What is it they knew? There was a gentleman named Hippocrates, 2,400 years ago. He said three things that still hold true. He says, all diseases begin in the gut. Remember that? All diseases begin in the gut. And then he says, one man's food is another man's poison. There is no such thing as universal healthy food. A food that's good for Darshan is not good for me, and the food that's good for me today may not be good for me in 3 or 4 months. One man's food is another man's poison. And then it is something really important. Let food be thy medicine, let thy medicine be the food. The food is the only personalized drug that we need. It is the drug we take every day. We just take the wrong drug. That's it. If we knew what our body wanted, if we knew the inside of us what is lacking, what if you can find out what is causing the inflammation? The chronic disease are caused by one thing and one thing only, the chronic inflammation. You can reduce the inflammation, all the symptoms go away, and they call them the disease. Somehow that disappears with no drug. Interesting thing is, we started this company and now we have tens of thousands of people who have gone through it. And it's amazing to see, coming from a totally different world, there is not a day goes by that I don't get at least 10 to 100 emails from people and saying, you have changed my life. I could not get up from the bed because I had joint pains and I have no pain. I used to have acne for 8 years. I've tried everything. My acne is gone. Get from two of our customers went on Dr. Oz show. One lost 71 pounds, one lost 49 pounds. We don't do anything with weight loss. We don't do anything with autoimmune diseases. These are just the symptoms. All we did was focus on fixing their gut, focus on fixing their leaky gut, reduce the gut inflammation, then reduce the inflammation in the host, and all these symptoms disappear. We don't diagnose any disease. We don't cure any disease. The diseases just simply melt away when you get rid of the inflammation. And that is the beauty. If you can take care of the inflammation in the body, everything goes away. What medicines do is they leave the inflammation alone. Remember, inflammation, inflame. It is, fire is burning. You got autoimmune diseases, you know what they do? They don't care why it's causing. Why do you have autoimmune disease? They say, suppress the immune system. Wait a sec, if you suppress the immune system, aren't you going to get some other diseases? Oh yeah, but we got drug for them. Right? And that's really is what happens. You got a pain, headache. Let's not figure out what's causing the headache. Let's just suppress the damn thing so you don't feel it. Right? And that's really the symptom. What if we could actually get rid of it from a root cause, which is simply the inflammation? So Dr. Shah, you are a medicine doctor. Why don't you tell us about inflammation?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about inflammation in previous talks here as well, and we all know inflammation is the root cause of all of our chronic diseases, right? And we talked about two important concepts about the microbiome. We talked about the gut-brain connection, which is through the vagus nerve and also through serotonin, and there's many other ways the gut bacteria basically exerts control on our mindset and directs us in certain directions as we're going through our day to seek out food and what kind of foods. We've talked about inflammation, and our microbiome protects our gut lining from bacteria and toxins getting into our body and causing an overreaction of the immune system. But there's also one other important point that we need to talk about with the microbiome. And this is what's fascinating to me, and this is where the latest research is and what Viome really focuses on, which is the microbiome is actually digesting most of the food metabolites for you. And these metabolites are interacting with every single system in your body. So what is happening is we're traditionally taught when you eat food, we're taking in the vitamins, we're taking in the calories, and we're making use of that. It's much, much more than that. It's much more complicated than that. The bacteria is using portions of the food that we don't use, and they're making metabolites, either good or bad metabolites, and those are affecting our health and our body. And that's where Viome comes in, because Viome is the only test that tests for those metabolites. So I'm going to let you kind of take it from there and talk about 16S and metabolite testing.
Yeah. So first of all, many of you will say, you know what, I know about microbiome. I did the microbiome test 2 years ago. It was totally useless. And you're right, it was completely useless. And that is really the thing. In the beginning, the technology just wasn't there. And when something is not there and it is hot, you get a bunch of scammers coming into the marketplace. And that's what really happened. Too many scam artists and snake oil salesmen start selling the microbiome test to you because they just wanted to make money. They didn't really care about you. Who cares what the names are, but anyone you see, almost 99% of all companies that do microbiome tests, just go to their website and look for the word 16S. When you see a 16S, run. Right? 16S is a technology that is completely useless. What it does is, the 16S, I don't know how many of you are technical, it's just a fraction of a gene that only exists on the bacteria. And by definition, you cannot see any viruses, yeast, fungus, mold. You just can't see it. Even the bacteria, there is a small portion of 16S that can tell you what genus this bacteria comes from. At a genus level, every one of us are the same. You don't have to do a test for it, right? It's every human being has the same genuses. Bacteroidetes, Firmicutes, Probertella, these are all the genuses. But we all have them the same. It's like saying, what is the genus of Los Angeles? It will be, well, there's some men, there's some women, there's some old people, there's some young people. That's the genus of LA. Well, that's the same as Seattle. And then Darshan said, oh, but Seattle has less crime than LA. What is the difference? Well, there are more women in LA. Women are criminal. And that's really all they did. They saw and said, this thing is high, somehow they must be all bad now. What they don't see is, it's not women who are criminal. It could be Paula, it could be someone, Jenny. But that's not even that, that's a species level. It could be the one, Jenny, who is a supermarket electrician, is the one that's a bad one. Right? But it really depends on what they are doing, not who they are. And the crime happens when they're doing the bad things, not because they're the bad person. The bad things, so if they're producing lipopolysaccharide, which is really the inflammatory compound in your gut, it doesn't matter his name is Paul or Jenny, they're bad people, right? If they're doing bad things, they're bad people. Interesting thing we find is, the same good thing or bad thing can be produced by thousands of different variety of organisms. So when people used to say, well, we can't find out what's causing it, because they're saying, well, in one person we had Paul and he was sick. In this person they have Jenny and she is sick. So we can't really say it's Paul or Jenny. What they couldn't see was both of them were doing exactly the same thing, which is producing LPS. So they were thinking about the organism, and we look at what they are doing. Now, by looking at what they're doing, we can say, oh, what food do you need to cut down the bad things they're doing, and what food do you need to increase the good stuff they're doing? So butyrate, the short-chain fatty acids, are good for you. If we see that you have a lot of organisms that could potentially produce butyrate, but you're not producing enough butyrate, we say you need to eat these foods that will increase the butyrate production because you already have the organisms. In some cases, we see that we don't have enough organisms that can produce butyrate. We'll start out by giving you the butyrate supplement. We don't sell, by the way. We don't sell any supplement. We don't sell any food. We don't sell any probiotic. Only time we tell you what to eat is because you need it, because we don't sell anything. You buy them from anywhere you want. Now, the thing is, we also will tell you that if you don't have enough butyrate, for example, we see you have a whole bunch of enough things here. And if we can stop feeding these things, the guys who are taking up the space are going to start dying. And these guys who we need, they'll start growing. And guess what? In 3 or 4 months, suddenly you have a lot more butyrate being produced. And now your diet has to change again. So you have to not only test, you have to constantly balance. Like you tune your car every year. You don't say, I tuned my car, last year, but I have to tune it again. Because if you don't tune your car, what happens? It goes up in a repair shop. When you don't tune your body, what happens to it? It goes up in an ER shop, right? Same thing, right? So the idea really is, we are able, when you do a test, all the complexities behind it, does all these RNA analysis, and it does all these things. At the end, what you get is really simple. You do your test, You open up your phone in 2 weeks and it tells you, eat bell pepper, don't eat spinach. Don't eat avocado, don't eat oats. But you can eat as much of pasta as you want, depending on whatever it is you need. Everyone is different. And by the way, if you are currently have a chronic symptom, you're better off doing the test more often to keep the body balanced and get out of this condition. And then you can reduce it. So if you are sick and you're feeling sick, then you do it maybe 4 times a year. And then you go down to 2 times a year. And then you go down to 1 time a year. But you still have to make sure your body is constantly balanced. And when you do that, you will find amazing things. Amazing things. We have had people who thought they were healthy until they realized they can get twice as much energy. They were just lethargic. They had brain fog. They had acne, eczema. I mean, these things they just didn't even thought. They thought they're just part of life. They were getting bumps on their skins and they thought just part of getting old until they were gone. People who thought they just always have to have the love handles because, women who have a belly, because they call them a baby fat. When it goes away, you don't remind them that you used to have a baby fat. They will tell you there was never a baby fat there. Right. So anyway, what I'm really excited about really is that we as people have a bigger purpose in life. Of course, we want to take care of ourselves, which is really our duty for not just because being selfish, because of our families need us. We have to take care of ourselves. We have to take care of them because we need them. But also, every one of us who comes together, remember what's happening here. Our artificial intelligence is constantly learning and keeps getting better and better. So more people who join, they become part of helping the humanity at the same time. Once we get a couple of million people, the system will know everything it needs to learn so it can help billions of people. And the more people we get, the more people we can help. This thing used to cost $5,000 when we started this company. We brought the cost down to $399. And I honestly want this thing to be under $50 someday. Would it take us 2 years, 3 years? I don't know. But all I know is by the end of this year, I'm hoping that we can bring it down to $299. My hope is in the next 2 years, we can bring it down to $199. In the next 5 years, I'd like to bring it down to, as I said, under $50, under $10 if I can. And then we can just use the philanthropic dollars to just keep everyone healthy. And if we can keep everyone healthy, I'm happy to shut the company down because that doesn't really make any difference to me. I mean, honestly, there is no amount of money I make is going to change my lifestyle. Anything that I need in my life, I can have it. The reason I don't have a watch is not that I can afford it. It's just I don't like it, right? So my point is, we are at a point, everyone, just not me, every one of us sitting in this room is at that point. It's not about us. It's about what can we do? What is going to be our legacy? Are we going to be the people who are going to watch this continuous suffering? Not just for us and our parents. Imagine if we don't do something, we're going to be watching our children suffer, our grandchildren suffer. And that's not something you want any parents ever to see. It's okay for us to watch us and our spouse suffer or even our parents suffer. We think it's okay, it's all part of aging. You never want to live to see a day when you have to see your child suffer. And that's what I'm talking about. We can stop it. All it takes is us coming together to say enough is enough and we're going to do something. And when we do something, I promise you, we would change the society. And on that note, let's see if we can get some questions answered.
All right, fantastic. I just want to say real quick, just so you know the process of this test is, we sell the testing kit here, you take it home, and basically, the next time you go to the restroom, you submit a little sample of your poop in a little, very sanitary container, self-addressed stamped envelope, throw it in the mail,
but there is no,
the app.
so poop
right?
is also, it's not very, interestingly, we got this Dutch thing, it's just simply a toilet seat, and you just touch, it's there, and you just flush it down. You touch it on this thing, put in a test tube, prepaid envelope, and 2 weeks later, all the things come in your app. And the thing just flushes right down the toilet, right? So there is no, it's not like a plastic container. You poop in a plastic container, then you worry about what do I do with this stinking plastic container. Can't flush that one.
No stinky plastic containers, yeah. And then we also have our medical professionals here that'll help you interpret the test and go over the results with you. So that's just the process of Viome testing. Who has questions?
I'm curious as to your father's pancreatic cancer and if he continued on with chemotherapy, did full rounds, and if he ended up having to go towards traditional medicine as far as for continuing on to maintain, hopefully, I'm assuming he's cancer-free now?
No, he's not. And I don't know. The point is, I didn't want him to die the way he was. I didn't want him to live the life he was living. He was full of energy. And I saw him, he couldn't get up from the bed. He couldn't eat anything. He couldn't, walk. He couldn't get up. And that's not the life you want your father to live. So now that we stopped, he's back to his energy. He didn't even feel any pain. Whether he has 6 months, whether he has 1 year, I don't want to be sounding like I don't care. But the point is, I want him to enjoy that year. I don't want him to live another 6 months and be in hospice. I'd rather have him be 1 year that he enjoyed the last year of his life than to say I can make you live 18 months and you suffer. It's just not what we want, right?
Yeah, I'd say a little bit about prostate cancer because in my previous life I was a pancreatic. In previous life I was a surgeon and I did a lot of surgery for pancreatic cancer. It's the biggest surgery you can do, the most debilitating surgery you can do. And I think the point of all of the things that we're talking about today is really not to think of Viome or some of the other testing or the stuff that we do here as a treatment for cancer because we're not there yet, but you want to prevent it.
Absolutely not. So if I gave you that impression that if I could solve that, I would have solved it. All I know is that if we stay on this path, in 2 years we would be there to be able to solve it? The answer is yes. Right. But if you don't join me, we will never solve it.
Right. Cancer needs to be solved. We all know that. And by reducing inflammation in your body, you will definitely prevent most of the cancers that can potentially occur. So it's all about reducing inflammation.
But in fact, there is a research that came out about a month ago that shows that pancreatic cancer happens when you have a leaky gut and it moves from the gut into pancreas, shuts the immune system in the pancreas and let the cancer grow. So we know there is a research, plenty good research that causes it. And they actually, at least in mice, they were able to put the antibiotics directly into pancreas and use the immunotherapy or immune system to kill it. It just obviously can be done in humans that easily. But the fact is, this problem can be solved. I'm absolutely convinced. All of them are purely around inflammation. These symptoms, when you have inflammation, it's like pulling a chain. It breaks at the weakest point. In some people, the weakest point happens to be heart disease. Some people, the weakest point tends to be somewhere else. But they're all the same. Gut is connected to your brain. Gut is connected to your skin. What do you think you get acne? It's not something. It's really the gut. And we have probably hundreds of people who told us that acne, eczema, psoriasis is all gone, dry skin. And we're doing some 10,000 people trial right now to essentially solve the skin problem through gut. We are working with people on all kinds of different things, trying to see how we can understand what's going on and how do we prevent it and how do we reverse it. But we are not there yet. So I don't want you to come under a misimpression that I have some bulletproof diet here that can just do it and somehow is going to cure everything.
Another question? Yeah. Go ahead.
What is leaky gut?
Yeah. So basically, remember our human body is like a donut. There is a tube that goes from here to the back and our body is around it. And it has a very tight junction. That means nothing is supposed to go from here. Only the things that are supposed to be absorbed in the body are these tiny molecules called metabolites. And everything else, the food and everything else, is supposed to stay inside it. 70% of our immune system is along our gut lining. So leaky gut, what happens is when you have inflammation in the gut, that inflammation causes the junction to essentially become permeable. That means the food starts to go into the blood and the immune system doesn't know because it has never seen that. And first thing, anytime you see foreign, it causes inflammation because inflammation is a way it essentially starts to arrest whatever is out there. But we are constantly leaking the stuff, is constantly being inflamed. Inflammation is good when you get injured. It actually protects you. But you have a constant inflammation, that is what causes the problem. So it is a chronic low-grade inflammation. That is what causes that because it's constantly happening because you're eating and it's getting released. So that's basically the tight junction starts to get loose.
Yeah, that's a great explanation. I think, one thing to realize is we all think of our skin as protecting us from the outside environment, right? So our gut is lined with 300 times more cells than our skin is. So between the outside environment, your intestinal cells are basically protecting you 300 times more than your skin is. And one of the main protectors of the gut lining is our microbiome. So when our microbiome is not intact, we have lost a huge layer of defense. We've lost basically the army protecting our lining from the outside environment.
It's symbiotic relationship. So our immune system and our microbiome are constantly communicating with each other and say, oh my God, I saw this pathogen. It's not good for me, the microbiome says, and it says, come here, attack us. Right? And that's really how it works. And when they don't dare to signal it, the pathogen starts to grow and starts to either thin the gut lining or it starts to inflame the gut lining, loosening up all the stuff. So Luke, you had a question?
Yeah, it's sort of a piggyback on the leaky gut.
Yeah.
If one has leaky gut and parasitic infection
Yeah.
and dysbiosis in terms of bad bacteria, would you recommend fixing the leaky gut, then addressing the parasites and the bacteria after that, or vice versa?
Yeah, so again, so first thing is when you have a leaky boat and you also have a broken oar, do you fix the broken oar first? Or to fix the leaky first? So you say, okay, fix the leaky thing first, and at least now I don't have the water coming up, and let me now fix the oar that needs to be fixed also, right? So I think is until you do that, you're going to constantly, it doesn't matter what you do, it's going to go right back into the host and cause inflammation.
So, other than using your technology, what is the single most impactful action a human can take to ensure a healthy gut?
So interesting thing is, again, forget about, I'm not here to sell you anything, right? So I want you to understand that I could tell you there is absolutely no such thing as healthy food. Popeye thought that spinach was healthy, and we can tell you that about 30% of our people that we have tested, the spinach causes more harm. Because what happens is people don't realize, spinach has a massive amount of oxalic acid or oxalate. And if you don't have the organisms that can digest oxalate or detox, essentially detoxify oxalate, it's going to end up in your body as either kidney stone or worse, right? Because that oxalate cannot be done anything. There's nothing you can do about it. Same type of thing when you think that, hey, the raspberry and the pomegranate juice is so healthy for everyone. That's just not true. Because all of these things like pomegranate juice have something called allergic acid. Allergic acid in itself does only harm. When the microbiome converts the allergic acid into something called urolithin A, ULA, that is antioxidative. And that's what you really want. So if you don't have those organisms that can convert the allergic acid into urolithin A, the best thing is you're just pissing off your money. Or the worst is it's causing you harm. Right? But it does no good to you at all. So that's really the thing, is there is no such thing as healthy food. Right? Now, one could argue that, it's not even eating more fiber. Because when you eat fiber, you're feeding one set of organisms that can digest the fiber, and others can't digest fibers. That means now you're growing the whole colonies, and that's the only colonies left, and there is no diversity. And when you have no diversity, it is really bad. People in a group behave very differently than they behave when we are heterogeneous. Anytime they do something called quorum sensing, right? They figure out how many of them are there. In a group, individually we are all calm people. We get in a group, everybody says, rah, 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 and you start throwing stones, right? I mean, it's just group behavior is very different. So you want as many different types of organisms because they provide different types of nutrients. They digest different types of food. So you really want as much diversity as you can. And if you just want me to give you general advice, I can tell you that. It is eat as many different types of food as you possibly can. But the problem you run into that is many of those foods are going to be causing you inflammation. Eat as much seasonal stuff as you can. Don't eat the same food that's not seasonal. I mean, those are general guidelines, but again, don't be under stress. Stress is good for a human body. It is what saved us from when the tiger was going to attack us, right? But when your boss is causing stress, or your wife is causing stress, or your girlfriend or boyfriend is causing stress, that is what I would call chronic stress. It's not going away. In good old days, when we saw a lion and you ran, and either lion caught you or you ran away, either way the stress went away. In today's world, you go to work, your boss stresses you. You come home, your spouse stresses you. There is nowhere to go.
I think also just to add to that, staying away from processed food. Like if God didn't make it, then you probably shouldn't be eating it. I think that's the one thing you can do to universally, I would say 99.9% of your time, improve your microbiome health. This processed food is really killing our microbiome. Secondly is only take an antibiotic if you really, really, really need it. Don't just take one every single time you have a little cough or a cold. It's like a nuclear bomb to your microbiome.
And by the way, also, there's a good chance that your body itself will be able to kill that infection anyway. So throwing a nuclear bomb inside your body is not the way to go.
I think we had a question here.
So hi, Naveen.
Yeah.
I'm a lifelong biohacker. So I was an early adopter. As soon as I saw the science on bio, I ordered the kit.
Thank you.
Got the blood test.
Yeah. We stopped it now.
Yeah, I need to stop that now because I've been referring
Yeah.
friends and family to it. So I just had a question regarding the update.
Yeah.
As you know, like on
Yeah.
the website, on the Facebook page, a lot of us are
Yeah,
confused.
yeah, yeah.
So I figured I came here to ask you the question.
Sure, of course.
From you.
Yeah.
So with this update, is the changes in the recommendations the result of the AI giving us new information because of a larger sample?
Yeah.
Or is it because some people have been suggesting that as you said earlier, we need to tune up different things at different times? So I'm just wondering,
Yeah.
is the recommendations going to shift either because of a larger data? I'm sure they'll shift because of both.
Yeah.
So could you explain
Yes.
that?
So I think for the people who don't have not taken the test, what he's saying is that when you sign up, even though you have not done the second test, we don't charge you anything anymore. So we give you the recommendations, and as we said, we are in it together. As we learn more, we go back and give you the new set of recommendations that we think are the best for you, better than what we thought the original recommendations are. And we don't charge you anything. And most people get upset and saying, why did you change my recommendation? And we remind them and say, look, the easiest thing for me to do is not to give you a new recommendation because it only costs us money and we don't charge you anything. If we didn't care about you, I would leave your recommendations alone because you have already paid me. Instead, we take go take the tough road, the difficult road, and say, you know what? Mea culpa, I think we know more now than we did before. So the two things happen. Either we learn something new or we have a predictive algorithm that says after the person has done this, we want you to do a second test because that will allow us to get the new set of data. But if you have not done that, we can predict and saying based on this diet, this is what most likely would have changed in your gut. And we're going to give you that recommendations. And again, we are still at this point of predicting it. We don't know what is there because you haven't done the second test. And that's the reason you get the new set of recommendations is because we predict what is happening inside it. And we also have learned something, either new literature or because now we have another 20, 30,000 more people that we have learned something new from.
So it's a combination of both.
Yes.
A larger data set,
Yes.
giving you more information, and predicting
Yes.
that if we rebalance this bacteria,
Yes.
3 months later we may want to focus on the
Exactly. Yes. Both of them.
And what's incredible here is, as far as I'm aware, this is one of the first time available to the public that we're actually using artificial intelligence to take the tremendous amount of data we have from your sample, combine it with the tremendous amount of data out there in the literature and make recommendations. This has not been done before. So using artificial intelligence to provide health recommendations, I think you're one of the first people to do it.
Yeah, not only that, I mean, interesting thing is for every person, now it's just hard when the computing power is so cheap, everybody has computer at home. It costs us somewhere between $40 to $50 just to crunch the numbers on Amazon Web Service. No wonder the damn stock is $1 trillion. Right? Because the point is the amount of data, there is no human being can ever process that data, period. And it only can be done is because we have computers learning and self-learning.
The sir in the turquoise shirt had a question.
Do enemas and colonics negatively affect the microbiome?
I'm sorry.
Enemas and colonics.
Yeah. So answer is I don't know. Now I can make up an answer just to sound smart, but I really don't know.
Yeah, I would say, the science behind colonics is very, it's questionable at best. So what I've seen mostly in my clinical practice is people are doing more harm than good with colonics. So, I mean, and that's just what I see. I know some people have had tremendous benefits, and people ask me about these things all the time.
We have not done the research, nor have I, the research is just not there. I mean, there is no research that tells me it works. That's all I can tell you.
Do you have a question?
Yeah.
Naveen, what do you think about pharmacogenetics right now and chemotherapy? And why do you think that the medical community is taking so long to adopt your sequencing program, to adopt genetic testing and everything that is out right now? And what can we do, for example, people like us, like medical systems, of the healthcare industry, be faster to really make a change?
See, imagine, they want one size fits all. They want symptom, drug, symptom, drug. The minute they have to personalize it, there is, it's hard. So they would rather not worry about what's going on. They take the whole population and say, every human being is the same. What is interesting is our DNA is same between any one of us, 99% same DNA. When it comes to our gut, less than 5% is the same, less than 5%. So how can the same food that's good for you can be good for him? And we sit at the same home, we eat the same food, somebody's getting screwed.
Yeah, there's being in the profession, I'll tell you, there's three main reasons. One is, when you go through medical school and you become a doctor, the last thing you want to do is pick up another book again for a few years, And so the rate of information coming out there is way exceeding the rate of new medical education. So most doctors, they don't even have time to get re-educated, and they're stuck in what they learned 30 years ago, which is now old news, I would say secondly is the way we were taught was really symptom, drug, and the health optimization and avoiding disease in the first place was never a priority. And thirdly, unfortunately, the entire system, both money and the politics behind it, is all geared towards disease. And so a pharmacokinetic test will tell you what medications not to use. Yes. And the pharmaceutical companies don't want that out there, right? Because you're going to learn a lot of things that tell you, well, this chemo's not even going to work on me in the first place, right? And where's the money in that? Where's the money in that, right? So.
But also, Darshan, I interviewed a lot of MDs because I was trying to hire some people. The basic question about, do you know what DNA is? And the MDs who graduated from medical school don't know what DNA is. And I asked them, do you know the difference between DNA and RNA? They look at me, it's like a deer in the headlight. What is that RNA thing? We learned that in a high school, son.
Yeah, I was going to say, they went to like Antarctica medical school or something. I don't know where they learned. But, in all reality, I think also there is a huge education gap, and the other great thing that's happening now is the education go directly to the consumer. The other problem is, I think doctors and the whole medical and scientific community really won't believe anything until there's a double-blind, placebo-controlled, 30-year study on 5 million people, okay? And that's just not going to happen now, And so by espousing artificial intelligence and learning much faster than humans can have ever been able to learn, we get much better information at a lot faster rate. So we're able to utilize this tremendous amount of knowledge now.
And I think, and also they don't want the consumer and the patients to become the CEO of their own health. They hate. Here, the next cell, they say knowledge is power. To them, they don't want people to have power, right? They want them to continue to be victimized. Ignorant victims is what they're looking for, not the powerful individual patients, right?
One more question?
At the back.
Okay, back there. Yeah. Sir.
Naveen, you have a point of view about which is generalized, which is different than the specificity of your product and what you do, but a generalized question about leaky gut. You have a point of view of what industrial agriculture is doing with wheat crop and the whole gluten craze, and whether that is truly aggravating in a generalized way for leaky gut.
Sure. So the answer is that gluten is not your enemy. So gluten is actually not generally, some people are extremely sensitive to gluten. And I can tell you there is a Rio virus that essentially when you eat gluten is that what causes the gluten sensitivity. But neither here nor there. But the glyphosate, which is really the pesticide that we put on our food. The glyphosate, the purpose of glyphosate is to really kill the insects. Guess what happens when you put that in your body? It kills all these basically gut microbiome. However, there's some people, think about people like me who grew up in northern India. What's our staple food? Wheat. If that was bad for my grandparents or great-grandparents or my parents, I wouldn't be born, right? The fact is, it is really depends on each individual whether they can tolerate glutens or not. Most people, unless you are a celiac, it's very little chance that the gluten really causes you grief. What happens is certain viruses in your gut, when they see exposure to gluten, they cause massive amount of inflammation. So you really need to know not just the bacteria, these are specifically what they are, RNA viruses. And when they are in your gut and they are exposed to gluten, they literally go berserk.
Okay, well, thank you so much. One more,
Yeah.
one more, okay. Uh-oh. She's going to ask 2 questions.
So the first question is, Naveen, you mentioned that the foods that we eat should change around every 3 to 4 months. So our ancestors didn't have the powerful tools that we have now to check their gut. So is that in any way linked to eating seasonal foods?
Yeah.
And the second question is, how much healthier were our ancestors compared to us?
Well, it's hard to imagine that we can really compare, because our way back ancestors, they died by the time they were 22 years old because their purpose was gone, right? Their purpose was to procreate, and anytime they were living beyond procreation, they were simply taking up the space and the resources that did not exist. So it's so hard to imagine when we are sitting here more than 22 years old, are we healthier? The answer is yeah, we are alive. That will say, yeah, we are healthier. But at the same time, if you look at the stuff, it's not that every 3 or 4 months. The reason I say that you have to do a test every 3 or 4 months is that when you change your diet significantly, then your microbiome changes significantly. If you're going to keep eating the same food and not follow the recommendation, then don't bother doing the test. It just doesn't do any good. It's only when your diet is changed significantly that changes the microbiome significantly. And then in 3 to 4 months, if you don't balance it, think of it like a seesaw. Now you start balancing it. If you don't stop, it's going to go balance the other way. So you have to constantly straddle to make sure you're balanced, especially when you are sick. And then when you start to get good stabilization, good diversity, and all the different nutrients that you need, then you can reduce it down to twice a year and then once a year. And that's really is how you're going to be able to get out of the chronic conditions.
Okay, and with that, thank you so much, Naveen. It was an absolute pleasure to have you.
Darshan, one thing you told me you're going to promise these people is that you're going to give them a discount from your own pocket.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're from my own pocket. So we're going to be offering everyone a $50 discount on the test. So it'll be $50 less. You can buy it online, actually. So if you feel like this is something that will benefit you, please stop by the front and get one. And we are always available for you for questions. And once again, we provide the clinical resources to answer any questions here that you have about your microbiome, leaky gut, all of that. So that comes with the package that we sell here as well.
I would tell you better than that. I tell you, this man is just a great human being here. This is really something not coming from us. He's giving it from our own side. And for me, if I were you, just don't take it for yourself. Take at least one for someone you care about. Because, first of all, it is his money, so it's good, use it. The more you buy, the more he pays for it, so that's good. The second part also is that we are happier together when we are healthier together. So if you buy one, just give it to someone you love, right? If you can afford to take 2 and do it together. And make him pay.
Thank you, everyone. We really appreciate all of you coming. Thank you.